welcome to Facts at 5. I am Michael Clark. It is Friday, June 5th, 2020. I'm here at the LTV Media Center in Waynescott, New York, with my lovely co-host, Morgan Vaughan. Say hello, Morgan.
Hello, Morgan.
So we have some good numbers from Steve Ballone and some bad numbers from Steve Ballone, representing the financial aspect of things.
Right.
Why don't you give us an overview of that?
Well, it looks like, and this hasn't happened for a couple months at least, that the county death toll overnight was 1, which is unfortunate for that person and that family, but is good news for just the rate.
Yes.
Now the people who have died from COVID-19 in Suffolk County is at 1,916. Ballone says we have not been to that level since the third week in March, and he's looking forward to the day when the number goes down to 0. So we're all in the good places for the metrics. The hospital capacity is 65%. Intensive care capacity is at 53%. All of those are good. We got to keep them down there so that we don't go bring the metrics up and then have to go back to phase 1 again or to quarantine levels.
And that's a big concern with all the protests that are going on.
It is a very big concern. And just Memorial Day weekend and people forgetting and, people just wanting to get back to regular life and summer.
Yeah.
I mean, this is one of the reasons anybody who lives here year round lives here. Not only to make all their money, but it is the nicest time of the year.
Now, you're going to be interviewing someone that might be able to give us a little insight on her concerns on that, right? We have Peter Van Scoyoc after
Peter Van
this,
Scoyoc.
And then we
have Reverend Dr. Leslie Duraceau, who is the minister at the Hampton's United Methodist Church. And she is going to be, she mentions that. We talk a lot about race and about the community, but she also mentions the protesters and COVID-19 and the concerns surrounding that, because obviously the people who are protesting are all different colors and ages and everything, but largely the African-American, the brown and black, as she says, communities have been hit with COVID-19 the hardest. And so we got to be careful, especially for those people in terms of the pandemic and the protesting. Yeah,
wanting to give their voice, but
right.
It's risky.
It's really risky.
So back to Steve. Sorry about that.
So that's okay. The fiscal impact, we are looking at potentially a $1.5 billion deficit over the next 2 years as a result of the pandemic. And so this is one of the reasons why we're trying to get back to normal as much as we can and open things up. A lot of those things you don't think about. Sales taxes, where we get a lot of our money from in New York. Nobody's buying anything big.
Right.
So, all of those big purchases that you do or all of just the purchases that you do are not there.
Right.
So those are a couple of the things that are going to be figured out over the next little bit.
And this is, obviously, we've never been at this point before, ever, with that kind of a deficit.
Right.
And out of left field, wasn't budgeted
right.
at all. So I guess it's kind of hard to respond to that, in a way. But you're right in terms of the taxes and other things that, we pay our taxes. I don't know, maybe it's just me, but you pay taxes and you're giving money to the government. You don't understand then it's dispersed.
Right.
It all goes around. It schools and all those things, parks and whatever, are all impacted.
Well, all of the taxes that we pay that we don't even think about, the payroll taxes and
right.
and all of those things that maybe we don't have as much even just from the payroll taxes because there weren't a lot of people working. And that's part of what the payroll protection plan was offsetting or trying to offset as well.
Right.
But some people just haven't been able to work. So that's, affected too. It's all those little things. They all add up.
And I guess the way they're trying to offset that is the expanding of the restaurants to be able to do the outside dining, right? So we have some information here from Mayor Richard Lawler about what the village is going to do. And he said that he's going to issue an executive order to allow restaurants and takeout food stores to set up temporary outdoor dining areas on public property starting next Wednesday.
Wow.
So the Sag Harbor Village Board has also proposed a law that would grant the use of public spaces for outdoor dining. At the board's meeting on Wednesday, Mayor Kathleen Mulcahy said she would also consider issuing an executive order. The East Hampton Town Board will discuss outdoor dining at its work session on Tuesday. So, hopefully by next Wednesday, all along we'll have, more of an insight on what's going on with that. But, since the restaurants have been closed for on-site dining since the economic shutdown, Governor Cuomo announced on Wednesday that they can reopen for outdoor dining next week when Long Island is expected to enter the second phase of emerging from the lockdown. According to the state's guidelines, a restaurant's outdoor tables must be spaced 6 feet apart. The staff must wear face coverings, and customers must wear them when they are not seated. So Mayor Lawler said that by giving executive orders a little bit faster than drafting new legislation, getting all voted on, all those kind of things, and it would be expeditious to do it this way. And I guess, the local restaurants are looking forward to this happening without a doubt. It's, trying to recoup that, which is going to be tough.
I think it sounds nice, actually. I know that as
you're
a server,
an outdoor diner.
Well, as a server,
Okay.
it's not fun. And there's different ways that there's different issues with it, rain, wind, etc. But I was just thinking about, okay, so you have Pierre's, which is a good example of a French restaurant. And one of the weird things about when you're in Paris is that you all sit on the same side of the table.
Was that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then, so it's really weird because as Americans, we don't do that. If you and I were going to go have dinner, we would sit across from each other.
Right.
We wouldn't sit next to each other and eat. And I was just thinking maybe they do that because people walk on the sidewalks.
Oh.
So you have to have that area cleared for them. This looks like they're going to have it away from the restaurant. So it'll be there's the walkway, and then it'll be on the edge, on the curb more, it looks like.
Right.
They were talking about Sam's, for instance, which is 12 feet. They need to have 6 feet.
Right.
But Rowdy Hall has that space
But that's private.
But that's private, so they just have to ask for permission for that.
From the owner,
Right.
which they will allow. They still have to go through the paper process, though,
Right.
in terms of asking for outdoor dining. I'm sure it's going to kind of be pushed through, I would think. But there is a process still, and the fire marshal has been,
Right.
working with the village to make sure that, and alcohol is going to be allowed to be served on the property, but it's unclear whether they're going to allow that on private property,
Okay.
which is
Yeah.
kind of odd. But
Yeah.
so that's where it's going. Hopefully that's going to increase some of the revenue, get some things, and then yet there's still a pandemic.
And there's still a pandemic, and then there's another. I just saw this that the other reason the cement sidewalks are not feasible is because they're not wide enough to be accessible for those with disabilities. There's so many things that have to go into figuring this out.
Right.
It's kind of
Law
amazing.
of unintended
The
consequences.
law of unintended consequences strikes again. But the town board will be figuring this out next week for East Hampton.
Yep.
And I'm looking forward to seeing what happens with that.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I think one of the things that's really important, we have a couple of minutes here, but there's a, something that you and I talk about all the time, like the value of public access, and not just LTV, but public access anywhere, in this situation. And when I say in this situation, we're talking pandemic, we're talking protests, there's a lot of stuff going on, as if people didn't notice that.
Right.
But this is the platform to be able to vocalize, to be able to, make your feelings heard. It's a very, very easy step. People see, maybe the shows that we've had on LTV and say, well, that's cool. I'd like to do something like that, but I don't have the time, or I don't have the ability, or whatever. It's a very inexpensive thing to do, next to nothing. We provide like a couple of hours of producer training
Right.
that we give for free. And then you come on and do the Morgan Show.
You can do a show in the studio. You can do a show that you submit. And there is a weird difference between you can do this on YouTube, but there's a difference
Right.
between being on television and being on YouTube. It's very funny.
Yes.
It is a medium that people still respond to in a way that is different.
Yeah.
And I know this because my husband was on a television commercial that was on News 12. And everybody was like, I saw you on this television commercial on News 12. Meanwhile, he did Hamlet. Everybody saw that. Nobody cared. They were like more impressed that he was on this television commercial.
Yeah.
And I think about that all the time. With,
Deals.
Yeah, with public. Yeah. Not that one.
Not that one?
Why'd you get a new car? What'd you get a new?
That wasn't him.
That wasn't him.
Okay.
But what's interesting is that people have this feeling about television, and you can do that, and it'll be broadcast in East Hampton. So if you have something that needs to be told to people in East Hampton, and we're not talking about even just your opinion, we're talking about performances, we're talking about a kids show, we're talking about a million things, and it's like, what is it, $12 to $15?
Yeah.
To produce, to have rent the
It's
studio for
$15
1 hour?
a show, yeah, to put it on.
So, and then we have people who can help you with some of the, if you're not technically versed with some of the other things. So it's important to think about.
Yeah, I mean, that's where, that's how I became involved with LTV, right? We put on East End Underground.
Right.
You and I did that, and Ellen, and that was my first taste of doing that, and said, well, this is great, right? So we're able to give local bands an opportunity, and they jumped at it. We obviously not able to pay anybody, but people were willing to come on to do it and to show what they can do. And we still do that. And by the way, speaking of East End Underground, we are working on getting those back together again as far as showing them. There was a couple of shows that we have in the hopper, if you will,
right.
that
and those are great shows.
Yeah, kind of put on hold because of the pandemic. Funkin' A, Mama Lee and Friends, and others. And
Heaven Sent.
Heaven Sent is another great one, a gospel band. And so those we'll be showing them, and we'll be announcing that next week because there's a lot of that going on anyway, which we've been doing. But if people have those videos, we've been asking for them that they've created with their bands themselves of original music, because we don't have the licensing otherwise. But if you have original music videos, get those to us, because we still do East End Underground, showing people's videos and their bands during the pandemic. So you can get that to us. We got a couple of new shows starting. We got one, actually Danielle's going to be filming tonight called Bridging the Gap with Anna Swankta, who is very involved on the East End with, I know, Moms Demand Action, a lot of other things.
Okay.
And she's going to be talking to the gals that are organizing the protest at the windmill on Sunday. But there's an example, right? She went out of her way. She really wants to, and now she's going to continue that show, bringing important messages that she feels are important, because there's no right or wrong on you got COVID?
Yeah. Sorry, you jinxed me by talking about it before. I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Well, no, I was just telling Morgan that yesterday I was suppressing a cough because
I couldn't hold it in.
The pollen is so bad right now. It's terrible. Anyway, not to belabor the point, but come, have a show, do it. This is your station. Make it yours. We have Peter Van Scoyoc coming up. Mm-hmm. We'll be talking to him about what's happening, his feelings on things. And once again, thank you to our sponsors. The Factor 5, Sound Aircraft Services, and don't forget to follow us on social media and on YouTube.
And on SoundCloud.
Oh, yes.
We're adding this as a podcast.
Yeah, why don't you mention that real
So you
quick?
don't have to see our lovely faces. You can just listen to our lovely voices.
Right.
Which is much better, I think.
Yeah.
I mean.
But that's good. That's
speaking for myself.
That's a new thing. The interviews and Factor 5 are going to be on SoundCloud now. Yep. So do tune into those. So have yourself a good weekend, folks, and stay safe. And we will see you next week. Thanks for joining us. Okay, we're back. I am here with the East Hampton Town Supervisor, Peter Van Scoyoc, who's been joining us every week on Fridays. Welcome, Peter.
Thank you, Michael. It's great to be back.
Good to see you. And we got the weekend upon us and all the good things that go along with that. But how's your week been? What's been going on?
Well, it's been another very, very busy week. We have a lot of developments that are, coming about right now. Obviously, there's been a number of protests with the George Floyd, protests in Bridgehampton, very peaceful, attended by, I think, over 1,000 people. There's a protest going on right now in Sag Harbor and one planned for Sunday. In addition to that, we've had the announcement of phase 2 reopening, which will occur on Wednesday, June 10th. And that will mean that retail stores, barbershops, and hair salons will be open with the safety protocols needing to be put in place. We're putting the word out to business owners that they'll need to follow those safety protocols and guidelines that are spelled out by the state, and to fill out an online affirmation form that they understand those safety protocols and will adhere to them. In addition, the governor's announced that he's fast tracking outdoor dining. That will also open on June 10th, phase 2. And as soon as those businesses get their applications for their seating plans filed with the town, they'll be able to open. Again, they'll need to go through the safety protocols and sign affirmation forms. We've been working to get guidance from the SLA, the State Liquor Authority, because restaurants that want to now serve outdoors, that's not part of their original license and permit from the state. There's guidance on how that's going to be done. It's an amendment to their existing license. Again, we'll have that as one single application process, bringing in all the entities. Also, the county health department has an application form. There's no permit fee for that. It's just a filing. Again, affirmation, understanding that those protocols will be followed. So we're trying to get that information out as fast as possible to the public and to the business owners so that they can make the necessary changes and comply with the guidelines.
That's there's a lot of that going on. It's going to be business well sought after by those folks. They're the restaurants especially. They're very happy that they're being bumped up into the next level to come on board a little bit earlier. In terms of the protests, Peter, how about the fact that, I mean, let's face it, there's still a pandemic going on, and they're not going to be able to social distance and all that goes along with that. What are your feelings on that? I mean, people need to voice their opinion. They're kind of caught in a quandary there.
So I think, first of all, I would say that I think it shows really how concerned the public is here in our communities and across the nation and across the world. I've seen these protests are not simply in the United States. They're not simply in major cities. They are in small towns and communities all across the country. They're all across the world. And this is a moment where the world is saying, we're in the midst of a pandemic, but this is such an important issue that people are out in the streets, close together. I have to say that in Bridgehampton, out of the 1,000 people that might have shown up, I did not see a single person not wearing a mask, which is comforting.
I did not either.
But still, you didn't have the 6 feet separation. People were marching close together and chanting. I am concerned about this triggering a spike in the infection rate, and that is concerning. But I think it also says a lot about how people feel so strongly at this time that they are willing to go out where they've been sheltering in place, they've been avoiding public places and close contact with others, to come together and show solidarity. This is just really a watershed, I think, moment in history. And here locally, we're kind of facing the triumvirate of what government's really all about, which is health, safety, and welfare. Health is obviously, we're dealing with that in terms of the pandemic. Safety concerns surrounding people protesting safely. This is a right that we have. It's one of the most basic rights that we have in this democracy, and we should be able to express ourselves in this way. It's a founding tenet of our democracy. and welfare, in that, we have a limited season and we need to be able to get our businesses open and operating as quickly and safely as possible. So, we're really facing all three of those major components of what really government is supposed to be doing for the general population.
Yeah, and what has been impressive to me with the protests is the fact that there's so many young people, and like I know the one that's going to be at the Hook Mill on Sunday, that was organized by a couple of young gals, and of course they're all young to me now, but the so it's really great to see, obviously for the wrong reason, but the involvement and the emotion and that goes along with that from the younger generation that are left carrying quite a burden here in many different ways across the country, across the world.
Well, democracy is not a done deal. I mean, every generation has to take up and stake claim to the democratic process and to secure our rights. They're not guaranteed forever. They're guaranteed in the documents and founding principles, but if we don't exercise them, and then we're going to lose them. And I think this is really a reaction. We see that there has been an erosion of our democratic values, an attack on the free press. These are all trends towards an authoritarian type of situation. And we're Americans. We believe in freedom and expression of our beliefs and rights, and the respect and dignity being shown towards others. And when that gets violated, it's the right thing for the American people to step out and say this is wrong and we need change. So I completely support this effort, and I understand why it's come about. And it's not surprising that under these particularly stressful times of a pandemic, that the economic inequalities within our country would be laid bare. The inadequate healthcare system would become a primary focus. I mean, these are all things that have been talked about for some time. They're unresolved on a national level, certainly, and we need to move forward and make some progress on much of this. And obviously, no one's freedoms are secure until everyone's freedoms are secure. So,
Yeah,
equality and the making sure that the law is enforced equally for all is critically important.
Yeah, that's for sure. And as far as COVID goes, should things go along the way they're tracking right now, and we get to the next phase on Wednesday, what's going to be the focus then? Throughout that and then leading up to the next phase, what's going to be the big thing for you, do you think?
So for us right now, we're discussing ways to adapt to this new reality, to be able to give people more space, to be able to restart our economy safely. And, a number of the things that we've talked about, and I've said this early on, that we need to be, at least in the short term, flexible and relax some of our zoning. We've been talking about, this outdoor dining idea. The town only allows 30% of occupancy of a restaurant to be placed outdoors, provided they have the physical space. We're going to have to, I think, be flexible and adapt and allow more of that. We're going to do that on a temporary basis. We're looking at potential street closures, particularly in downtown Montauk, and some changing of street direction and flow, so that will give people more space to move about, so they're not shoulder to shoulder on sidewalks, to be able to allow for more outdoor dining. We know that these types of steps are important to keep the public safe. We can't regulate how many people arrive in our town, but we certainly can address how they move about, and we want to make sure that they're able to do so, give everybody literally breathing room, if you will.
Yeah.
So some of the street closures will allow people to move out on the streets more. We'll give more space on sidewalks. And actually, having a more walkable downtown is always been for the last well, at least since I've been on the board, a goal that we've been trying to achieve. Back in 2016, we talked at the initiation of the Hamlet studies and about making our downtowns more walkable and more pedestrian bicycle friendly. That's, I think, a potential added benefit at this time. If there's a silver lining, this might be it. We'll make these adaptations on a temporary basis, see how it goes. And it might just be that some of these changes that we adopt now will be necessary in the immediate future, but we may also decide to adopt them longer term, provided they work out. And this is a bit of an experiment. We're going to ask for the public to be patient and open-minded about how we do some of these things. Again, just on a temporary basis, but we need to be able to respond and try and keep everybody safe and get our businesses up and running as safely and as quickly as possible. We have a short season here.
Yeah, and from what I've seen, not a fact at 5, but the very limited amount that I've seen, people seem to be complying. I mean, there's always, you're always going to find the people, but a friend of mine runs the farmers market over in Springs, Paul Hamilton, and he was saying, people were going with the flow. They fenced it off and had the one entrance and only allowing a certain amount of people in, and whatever guidelines that you folks had laid out for them, which ended up working out well. People seemed to be adjusting.
Yes, and I'm also have noticed that in my travels about town that particularly in the business districts where you see the most people, that people are being very respectful and responsible. They are wearing masks, and I think everybody understands that we need to do all of this reopening safely, because if we don't, there's a resurgence that it means that it's just that much longer until we can get back to normal. We've all sacrificed a great deal in these last 85 some odd days or whatever it is now. And it would be a shame that all our sheltering in place and social distancing be for naught. Again, going back to the protesting, I think that's absolutely critical that we show solidarity for that cause. And I would just caution everybody to try to be cognizant about distancing as much as you can during those protests. There is also testing here locally in East Hampton at the Panago Place. You can make an appointment to get testing. It's important that we understand who has the disease and might be transmitting it. There's a pretty high percentage of people who are asymptomatic yet have active disease. So critical to improve testing throughout the region.
Well, yeah, we definitely got to stay on top of that. And Peter, once again, thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule. Have yourself a good weekend and a safe weekend, of course. And hopefully we'll see you here next week at the same time.
Thank you, Michael. It's a pleasure to be here. Stay safe, everyone. Be well.
Thanks, Peter. Good night.
Thank you.